Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something about women who don't chase, who don't beg, and who don't try to convince a man to stay. Those women got a different kind of power. See, some men, especially the avoidant ones, they don't respond to pressure, they respond to presence. And when a woman carries herself with confidence, grace, and self-respect, it drives those men absolutely wild because she becomes something they can't quite figure out. Confidence that commands respect without seeking validation is one of the most magnetic forces a woman can possess. It's not about arrogance or showing off. It's about walking in a quiet power that says, I know who I am, and I don't need your approval to believe it. See, when a woman truly knows her worth, she doesn't compete, she doesn't compare, and she doesn't chase. Her energy speaks before she even opens her mouth. That kind of confidence doesn't scream, it glows. It draws attention not because she's trying, but because she's settled within herself. A confident woman understands that validation from others is temporary, but belief in herself is eternal. She doesn't get flustered when someone doesn't notice her value because she knows that not everyone is qualified to recognize a diamond when they see one. Men, especially those with avoidant tendencies, are drawn to that kind of quiet assurance like moths to a flame. Avoidant men tend to pull away from people who demand control or cling, but when they encounter a woman who stands tall in her own energy, they can't help but lean in. She's not chasing him, she's not trying to fix him, and she's not bending over backward to make him stay. Instead, she's holding her ground, smiling and saying, I'll be here if it's right, but I'm still good if it's not. That's power. That's what shakes the foundation of a man who's used to being pursued. It flips the dynamic completely because now he's the one feeling curious, wondering what makes her so unbothered, so sure of herself. Confidence shows up in the small things, a steady tone when others would shout, a graceful response when others would argue, and a calm silence when others would plead. It's not about proving a point. It's about knowing you don't have to. That kind of woman doesn't explain why she's valuable. She lives it. Every action, every boundary, every choice says, I respect myself. And when a woman respects herself, everyone around her has no choice but to do the same or leave. Either way, she wins. The beautiful part about this mindset is that it's contagious. When a woman operates with that level of self-assurance, she changes the energy in every room she walks into. People sense it. They listen differently. They speak differently. They treat her differently. That's because confidence is energy, not words. It radiates from the inside out, and the right kind of man, even one who fears closeness, can't resist it. She becomes the calm in his storm, the one he can't manipulate, and the one he can't forget, because in a world full of people chasing validation, she stands out simply by not needing it, and that right there is what makes her unforgettable. Emotional control that keeps mystery alive is one of the most underrated yet irresistible traits a woman can have. It's not about pretending not to care. It's about mastering your emotions instead of letting them master you. When a woman can feel deeply but choose her response with wisdom, that's real strength. Most people react instantly when they feel hurt, ignored, or rejected, but emotional control means you take a breath, you step back, and you move with intention. That calmness, that ability to stay grounded while everything else feels shaky is powerful. It tells a man, especially an avoidant one, that you're not easily shaken, not easily provoked, and certainly not desperate for reassurance. You've trained your heart to be loyal to your peace first, not your feelings in the moment. Avoidant men are often drawn to mystery because it gives them room to feel safe. They fear being overwhelmed by emotion or intensity, but when they meet a woman who feels everything yet doesn't chase them for clarity or validation, they find themselves captivated. She doesn't text paragraphs when she feels distance. She gives space. She doesn't demand explanations. She waits for actions. And while she waits, she remains calm, centered, and focused on herself. That drives them wild because they're not used to a woman who can manage her emotions with that much grace. It makes them wonder what's going on in her mind, what gives her that peace, and why she doesn't crumble when most would. Emotional control doesn't mean you suppress your feelings. It means you express them from a place of confidence instead of insecurity. It's knowing that your emotions are valid, but not every feeling deserves a reaction. You choose your words wisely, you protect your energy, and you know silence can often speak louder than any argument ever could. A woman with emotional control doesn't try to convince anyone to love her. She lets her consistency, calmness, and boundaries do the talking. That composure creates an aura of mystery. Men can't predict her next move, and that unpredictability is alluring. They start to question what makes her so different, what gives her that inner strength, and how she can remain soft without losing control. It's that balance, being emotional without being chaotic, that keeps a man intrigued. Avoidant men, who usually retreat when things get too heavy, suddenly find themselves chasing the calm. They start thinking about her when she's not around because her silence lingers. Her emotional control becomes a kind of magnet. It challenges their avoidance. Because when she doesn't react wildly, they lose the power to control the emotional tone. They can't push her away to feel safety anymore. Instead, they're pulled closer, trying to understand her stillness. That mystery, rooted in discipline, not detachment, creates desire on a whole new level. Emotional control in its purest form is emotional intelligence in motion. It's knowing that the most powerful move isn't always reacting. It's knowing when to respond and when to stay still. Independence that proves you don't need, you choose, is one of the most magnetic qualities a woman can ever display. See, there's a certain kind of peace and confidence that comes from knowing you can stand on your own 2 feet when a woman moves through life with purpose, passion, and self-sufficiency. It sends a message without her ever having to say a word. It says, I am complete by myself, but I'm open to partnership. And that right there is what separates a woman who's chasing love from a woman who's attracting it. Men, especially avoidant ones, are fascinated by women who don't need them to fill an emotional void. That kind of independence feels rare, it's powerful, it's freeing, and it commands respect without effort. When a woman is independent, she doesn't wait around for someone to make her happy. She builds her own joy, her own rhythm, her own life. She invests in her dreams, her health, her peace, and her growth. She has a full plate before love even shows up, which means she's not afraid of being alone. And that right there is what drives avoidant men wild. Because when you're not afraid of being alone, you become impossible to control. You're not clinging. You're not begging, and you're not trying to convince anyone to stay. You're already whole, and people who are whole make others curious. Avoidant men who often rely on distance to feel safe find themselves drawn to that kind of woman because she doesn't chase them when they pull away. She stays steady, she keeps moving, and that energy flips the dynamic completely. An independent woman doesn't treat a man like her world. She invites him into hers. She understands the difference between wanting someone and needing them. Wanting comes from strength, needing comes from fear, and she refuses to love from fear. She's not trying to fix, save, or prove anything. She knows that love should complement her life, not consume it. That's the kind of energy that makes a man step up because he realizes she's not looking for a rescuer. She's looking for a partner. She's looking for someone who can match her energy, not drain it. Avoidant men are used to being the ones in control. They like to keep emotional distance to protect themselves from vulnerability. But when they meet a woman who's independent, that distance stops being a weapon. It becomes irrelevant because she doesn't chase, doesn't plead, and doesn't crumble when they retreat. She respects space because she values her own. That independence becomes intoxicating. It's not about her being cold or detached. It's about her being self-sufficient and emotionally balanced. A woman who truly embodies independence doesn't fear loss. She understands that what's meant for her won't have to be forced. That mindset alone makes her powerful. Avoidant men who often fear being engulfed or depended on find freedom in her energy. They realize they can breathe around her because she's not clinging, she's choosing. And once a man realizes that a woman like that can live beautifully with or without him, that's when he starts to chase her presence instead of escaping it. Soft femininity balanced with strong boundaries is the perfect combination of warmth and strength that keeps a man's attention long after the first impression. It's the art of being gentle without being weak, kind without being naive, loving without being taken for granted. When a woman knows how to move in her feminine energy while still protecting her standards, she becomes unforgettable. Femininity in its truest form is power. It's the quiet confidence that doesn't need to compete, control, or dominate. It's the softness that heals, comforts, and inspires, but it's paired with the kind of strength that says, I will love you, but I will not lose myself for you. That's the kind of energy that confuses avoidant men because they don't know how to handle a woman who's both soft and strong at the same time. See, most avoidant men are used to extremes. They either meet women who are too aggressive and controlling, or women who are overly giving and self-sacrificing. But when a woman can offer warmth with backbone, that's something entirely different. She's emotionally available, but not emotionally desperate. She can listen, support, and love deeply, but she's not afraid to walk away if her peace is disturbed. That balance between tenderness and self-respect drives an avoidant wild because it's unpredictable. He can't manipulate her with silence, and he can't scare her away with distance. She's too centered for that. Her softness makes him feel safe, but her strength keeps him on his toes. A woman who moves with soft femininity knows her emotions are a gift, not a weakness. She can express herself without attacking, and she can forgive without forgetting. Her boundaries are not walls, they're doors with locks. She decides who gets access and how much, and when a man realizes that access to her is a privilege, not a right, he starts to value her more. That kind of woman teaches with her energy. She doesn't lecture, she demonstrates. Her calm voice can stop chaos, and her refusal to argue with disrespect sends a louder message than any shouting ever could. Avoidant men often struggle with vulnerability. They fear being controlled or losing their independence. But a feminine woman with boundaries makes them feel something rare, safe, and challenged at the same time. She doesn't try to fix him, she just holds her standard. Her gentle energy invites him closer, while her boundaries remind him that closeness is earned, not demanded. That delicate balance keeps him curious, because he's not used to being both accepted and held accountable in the same breath. Femininity without boundaries becomes fragility, and boundaries without femininity become hardness. But when a woman blends both, she becomes magnetic. Her softness draws him in, her strength keeps her respected. She's the peace he runs to, not the chaos he runs from. And that mix, grace and grit, is exactly what makes an avoidant man start to question his own patterns. She becomes the exception, the one he can't forget, because she embodies the balance he didn't even know he needed. Authentic communication without over-explaining is one of the most powerful tools a woman can have when it comes to connection and attraction. There's something magnetic about a woman who can speak her truth clearly, calmly, and confidently without the need to justify every word. Authentic communication means saying what you mean, meaning what you say, and letting your words match your energy. It's about being real instead of rehearsed, honest instead of filtered, and firm instead of fearful. When a woman communicates like that, she creates a sense of emotional clarity that even an avoidant man can't ignore, because she's not playing games, she's not manipulating with silence, and she's not chasing understanding. She's simply expressing her truth, and then she rests in it. That's powerful. Avoidant men often pull away when they feel emotionally overwhelmed. They dislike drama, confrontation, or anything that feels like pressure. So when they encounter a woman who communicates with maturity instead of chaos, it stands out. Instead of yelling, She explains. Instead of begging, she states her boundaries. Instead of sending 100 texts trying to get a reaction, she sends one message that speaks volume, is calm, honest, and self-assured. That kind of communication disarms an avoidant man because it removes the emotional tug of war he's used to. She doesn't fight for understanding, she invites it, and that shift from demanding to simply declaring her truth gives her an aura of quiet authority. Authentic communication isn't about oversharing either. It's knowing when to speak, and when silence says enough, it's not her job to convince someone of her worth, nor is it her responsibility to make someone comfortable with her emotions. She speaks her needs without guilt and expresses her feelings without turning them into weapons. When a woman communicates like that, she earns respect. Avoidant men, who often distance themselves to avoid emotional entanglement, find themselves drawn in by her composure. She doesn't threaten their freedom, she challenges their avoidance. She makes it safe to connect because she's not reactive, she's intentional. Over-explaining, on the other hand, comes from insecurity, the need to be understood, validated, or approved. But authentic women know that their truth doesn't need defending. They understand that repeating themselves to be heard by the wrong person is a waste of breath. They choose peace over persuasion, and that's what makes their presence so commanding. Their communication becomes a reflection of their self-worth, clear, calm, and confident. When a woman practices this kind of communication, she doesn't chase closure or clarity from others. She gives it to herself. And that's exactly what drives avoidant men wild. They can't read her, can't control her, and can't forget her. Because her words carry weight, not because she says so much, but because she says just enough. Authentic communication isn't loud, it's precise. It's truth delivered with grace. And in a world full of noise, that kind of woman becomes unforgettable because her silence and her speech both carry meaning. The power of walking away when standards aren't met is one of the strongest, most magnetic moves a woman can make. It's not about attitude or pride. It's about self-respect. When a woman truly knows her value, she doesn't beg anyone to treat her right. She doesn't explain her worth over and over to someone who refuses to see it. She simply walks away. And that moment when she chooses herself over chaos is the moment her energy shifts from chasing to attracting. See, there's something deeply powerful about a woman who can love someone deeply but still leave when she's not being honored. That's not weakness. That's emotional maturity at its finest, because love without respect is imbalance, and she refuses to settle for imbalance in the name of affection. Avoidant men are used to control through distance.